here to talk about relationships, and the reason this came up is because of all the coaching calls I've been doing with folks that are couples. It's either one of two situations. Either one of them owns a business and now they're working from home, which they're not used to doing. And the other situation is there's two of them that own businesses or involved at a pretty high level.
Working.
Yeah, and then now they're both doing that from home. And so what the fact of the matter is that if you have a relationship and there's any, I'll say I get maybe crack for bad loss of better words. Is that a good word to use? Yeah, loss. Yeah, lack. So something that in essence just is not ideal. This situation.
It's going to amplify.
Yeah, this is an amplifier. So that is the facts, and folks are going to come out either stronger in the relationship on either side of this crisis, or they're just it's not going to be a good situation.
Well, and that's true of any crisis, right? Like something happens, if you don't have some common ground or you're not on the same page, any crisis, whether it's a health crisis or a financial crisis, any crisis is going to do that. But now we're all thrown in it. Sometimes crises come and it's just you guys. But this is like a community thing. It's a national thing. It's a universal thing, really. So we're all in it together, and it's just how we manage what we do in this that will make or break certain situations.
So what we're going to talk about is mindset and strategies, those two elements that you can implement that we found work well for us. And some of this comes from direct input to clients working with, helping them with these specific problems and how they're navigating it. Okay. So the first piece is that, and this is really important, is that everyone needs to manage this for them, take care of themselves, right? So self-care, really, really, really important. Write that down. Self-care is very important. So Jolie needs to do self-care. I need to do self-care. That's it, period. I need to support her for self-care. She needs support. She doesn't need to do anything, but she should. I'm going to use should, even though I don't like that word. She should do the same thing for me, right? That's just how it rolls. Do you agree?
Yeah, well, anytime, but again, especially right now, and especially for anyone who has kids at home, because we'll get to that, but that throws a whole other thing in the mix. Yeah. So
got to take care of ourselves, because if she's not in a good place, I'm not in a good place, then it's already, now you're adding more shit on top of the problem, and it's just not going to go well. So what does self-care mean? Depends on the person. What would you say? What would you put out? Like, what would be some of the core foundational things that are probably going to be similar?
Well, I mean, obviously right now people aren't going out and getting massages or the things that they think are going to be something that can take care of themselves, right? Or pamper, or the self-care things that we might think of. But moving and breathing, I think, are the two things. So whatever that looks like for you. I'm teaching a ton of yoga classes right now. That's all going online here live. Because people need it and they're so thankful. Going for walks, whether it's together as a couple or a family or by yourself, or going for a run. I mean, there was one point in time where it was years ago, but I would call it exercising my demons, because if I had a lot of stress going on, like I would lace up. There'd be times where Chris would sometimes throw my shoes at me. Not literally, but I think he'd want to. Like, get out on the road. Like, you need to get out of here. And it's no different now. So I would just say, breath work, moving your body in whatever way makes you feel good. Find some mindfulness. Find a way to quiet your mind, because there's a lot coming at us. And that would be one of the biggest self-care.
And the neurology, whatever you can do to retrain your neurology, in essence, lower your stress response so that you are sleeping well at night. And obviously nutrition is a big piece too. What you're eating is really important. So what is it you're choosing to put in your body is critical right now also, because we want to, think about it. If I'm stressed and I got additional stress at home and I'm not eating right and I'm not sleeping right, that is like a perfect recipe for pushing down my immune response in a major way. And who here wants to have a bad immune system? So self-care, number one, got to do it. Okay, so and with that also, I would say nurture yourself. We have two separate friends that we know really pretty well that are both in ICU right now. They're not even related. There's two different people, two different places, two different communities. They're both in New England, but regardless. So everyone here is going to be impacted to some degree. You're going to know someone's probably sick if you don't already. You're going to know someone who gets really sick. Maybe you'll even know someone or know someone who knows someone who passes away. So it's not awesome. It sucks. But the fact of the matter is that it comes with emotions. And so we need to be real about that, especially for the guys. It's not time to push that stuff down. It's a great time to journal, write things out, talk to somebody, express how you feel, express your emotions. You don't want to come out of this and having a PTSD scenario or being detached from your emotions. That's like not somewhere really want to be. So what I would recommend is really just tuning in. Hey, if you got to get a therapist, fine. If
a lot of them are doing it via Zoom or
right, yeah, exactly. Get counsel with somebody, but do something. Keep your mindset right. And with that in mind, one of the strategies that we pretty much employ, I think this is kind of like it's not really a written rule, but we kind of control how much media we got going on.
Oh yeah. We've gone days without the TV being on.
Yeah.
Days.
Yeah, that's true. Even at nighttime, we just hang up at the fireplace. So,
it's not necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to know what's going on in the world with the facts of what's going on.
But there's just a
other
lot
than that,
of not that this isn't serious, but there's just a lot of media hype or stirring of the pot that doesn't need to be stirred. We get it. This is serious. Stay inside, shelter in place. Don't go there's, the basic protocol. Now we don't need to layer it on top of the next because it's not going to change what you should be doing anyway.
Right. So that guard your gates. Social media is another one. If you're in social media, really pay attention. We're on there, but we pay attention. I don't get involved in crazy rants from folks and just streams of bullshit. So
this is the time that I find that humor is the most valuable. So my cousin and a couple friends and I are just passing back and forth these different memes that are kind of maybe off color, inappropriate, or just funny. Because you need to find levity in this too, because it's just a lot. So I do use social media for that sometimes.
And the last piece on the social side that's coming up for me is family and people that are distant. For our family's all distant, so but even so, yours may be close by and you're still not seeing them. So I invited your mom. You may know this. I invited your mom for dinner today. So Jolie's mom's coming to dinner again, and
FaceTime.
Yeah, we put her up at the end of the table, and she FaceTimes with us. And we've done this week. It's kind of fun, actually. Yeah.
So we've had cocktails with friends. With a friend one night.
Yeah, with friends that are right here around the corner. But tomorrow night we're having cocktails with them.
Oh, we are?
Yeah, it's Thursday, right? Yeah, Thursday. Yeah, take out from Otis, and there we go. Boom, there's a Thursday night. So it gives you kind of something to look forward to, right? And also, just connections are really important right now. So let's talk about something about boundaries. Let's talk about work a little bit, and then let's talk about how about if things aren't kind of going so good and how you should manage that. Okay. So let's talk about work environment.
Yeah.
When we talk about that.
Well, I think it's really important. As Chris started this off saying that some people have never worked from home, and now all of a sudden you have one or two people working from home. And how the hell do you manage that? Chris has never actually worked in a proper office. He's always, since he graduated from college and got his first job, he's been working out of the house. So it's something that he's always been really good about managing his time and his space. So it's slightly different now where we have to create our schedules together, or we have, I want to call it a midnight meeting because it's not that late, but the day before we say this is what's going on. I have my teaching calendar laid out for the week. Chris has his appointments, and we're taking it day by day. This is the time that I need and I can't be interrupted. This is the time that I'm teaching. I can't be interrupted. This is the time that Grayson has school. So how do we manage all that? So there are very structured boundaries around protecting that time that you need, because you don't get a damn thing done if there's not. and there could be interruptions, or if one person maybe doesn't work out of the house or doesn't have like a job per se. I hate to say it that way, but because you're working. But sometimes there's this unfamiliar cadence when your partner is suddenly working from the house, and it's not like you can't just have coffee talk. Like you need to let that person work, or you need to be able to work. So just creating boundaries around your time and when you can have that free time, or passing in the kitchen or whatever.
So is you saying people need to communicate?
Oh yeah, I guess we could just boil it down to that bullet. Yeah.
Yeah, communication. Yeah. And so,
which doesn't always happen if you work out of the house, right?
So that with that said, so communicate what's going on during the day for you, for me, how it looks and how it feels, going over calendars. And then before, I think we're in a pretty good day-to-day scenario. Mm-hmm. I'm not finding it's working well talking to people and telling them to book things out a week or 2 weeks in advance right now. Mm-hmm. Because even though you might be in the same reality in a week or two, it just seems things just seem to work better at this point in time, kind of day to day. The night before, plan it out, and then run the plan that following day. But let's say there's a conflict. I mean, I can't think of one that we've had that you couldn't work out. But what if a couple of people have the same thing going at the same time, and someone's got to be watching the kids?
I think that's where you just kind of have to loosen your rules a little bit. Right now, she's watching the kids' baking championship. So she's going to have an hour worth of TV time. It's not the worst thing in the world. You're just going to, or if you're working in 2 different parts of the house, making sure, like, I don't know how many people have their own, we have our own spaces to work within, but like if you don't have that, who's going to have the dining room office and who's going to be in a different room for the office, and just making sure that space is delineated. But when it comes to the kids, like, you probably have to have a team meeting with your kids too, and kind of depending on how old they are, and kind of explain the situation a little bit too. Like, everybody needs to be on board with this plan, and maybe use like this is a reward for her or something. Does that help with that kind of the direction you're looking at?
Yeah, I think that's good. I just think, I mean, even like boundaries in regards also to like, when you're like, I've had a few nights where I worked this week. Does it happen sometimes? Why? Just because of the flow of the day, I just didn't get it all in. Tonight, I'm not going to. So we're going to hang out, watch something. But the fact of the matter is that when you're working, you're working. When you're not working, you're not working. And this is a challenge for people who are not used to working at home.
This is true.
Because it's easy to work all the time.
Shut the notifications off. I remember when I used to be a project manager, I had to shut the office door and shut the notifications off, because you would get pinged through all hours of the night, depending on like where you're working with folks. It could be people in different time zones.
Yeah. So
protect there's a boundary on when you're working also.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and then also, the boundary of that Jolie mentioned earlier, I'm not going to interfere, you're not going to interfere, and how we manage that. So those are really important context, and communication is really necessary. Now, let's talk about what happens in regards to conflict. Mm-hmm. And we're going to do a video on this, and we still can at another point. But in essence, the idea of how do you have a disagreement, mm-hmm. and what should that look like? I think that's an interesting thing to consider, because where do most people model how they disagree?
Well, obviously, it's coming from where they grew up.
Yeah, it's coming from where they grew up, because it comes from family. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you say, obviously, because we talked about this kind of stuff, but some people don't think about this, right? So it comes from family, and it's like, who taught us
conflict resolution
as couples? Like, what class did you go to for that? Mm-hmm. And most people haven't had any training regarding that idea. And here's what tends to happen is when someone gets to when our state changes, I hear a 5-year-old movie, when our state changes from almost like I'm upset, and now I'm in the energy of being upset, my neurology is upset, it's hard for me to access rational thinking.
You're kind of like a 5-year-old.
Yeah. So so Jolie, so what we've done in our relationships is we've built in mechanisms to give feedback. It's true. So how that works is that what ends up happening is that we're in a conflict. I've been, trigger is a good term, like, so basically something's happened, I've allowed myself, and this is the thing, everyone has to accept responsibility for themselves. No one can trigger you, but our partners are better at hitting our buttons, right? Like they know the sequences. So it's harder at times for us to resist. It's harder for us to resist when we're stressed out. It's harder for us when we're tired.
I'm tired.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
When we're tired, so Jolie will even say, I'm tired. Don't even go here right now. So there's things that she's giving me feedback in the moment where I'm like, now I've got to make a choice. She just gave me feedback. Do I want to continue or do I not want to continue regardless of what I want to get done? Okay. So that's feedback. Another one is you're being an asshole right now.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the feedback. That's one of the feedback mechanisms. So
totally fair.
Yeah. So so it just depends on how you want to structure that. We do not, by the way, notice the term. I said you're being an asshole. She didn't say you are. How did that? So it's me. It's me saying it's you. So saying you are an asshole. It's different than being an asshole. They're not the same. Now some people are just assholes, but that's not the point. So are you being one? Or are you one? Hopefully you're not one, because if you married an asshole, I don't know what to tell you, because I can't help you with that problem at all.
But here's the thing. That's not going to be everybody's language, right? It's been a long time with us. We're the
People say butthole.
No.
Okay.
It was sort of an unwritten thing where we just kind of decided, like, we're going to speak it now, because if we don't, it's going to fester. So it comes out in whatever way it comes out. Maybe it's like, stop being an asshole, or I'm tired, or why am I the one who's always like the one who's got the issue?
I don't know. I'm picking examples. I don't want to make you be the bad person. So
but we've seen,
I'll take one for the team.
But we've seen with people who we know and care deeply about, when they don't say anything, they think they're doing a good thing for their relationship, and they're not. They're actually doing themselves and their partner and their family a disservice by not saying, hey, this is rubbing me the wrong way. I don't like the way you're treating me. I don't like the way you're speaking. I don't like the way you're acting. Like, this is like, we got to, like, time out. We got to talk about this. Or we don't have to talk about this right now. Right.
So it's an artificial harmony scenario if we're not talking about it. And part of the reason this even comes up now is because A, you're in a house, you're spending more time together. B, the other problem that comes up is, I'm working with clients that they have different political views, or they have different viewpoints on, well, how are we going to manage this? What's okay? What's not okay? Should we be doing this? Should we be getting together with this friend? Even if we're at a fire pit together, we're 6 feet away, is that okay? Oh, no. We're not even going to leave the house. We're not going to go anywhere. And now you've got two different models of the world, two different beliefs and paradigms. How do you manage that? Do you have any input on that? You want to come here, Grayson? Do you have any input on that, Jolie? On the idea of you have a different model of the world, maybe your values and stack ranks are slightly different than mine, and your decisions are a little bit different in regards to how you want to make decisions.
Gosh, that's a big topic.
I know, but it's coming up for people.
It is. I think we have boring.
Grayson, stop. Okay.
You can be out here if you're going to be quiet.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're fortunate because I think we fall on the same page for a majority of things, but there are some people who may not, and I think that's the point where you have to.
Grayson, go over there, and Mom will come over there.
Okay. All right, you can answer that, your own questions. Excuse me.
Okay, sorry about that. It's being at home and parenting. So the challenge is that I have a different model world than Jolie, right? Like, she was raised in a different environment than I was. Some of how, her parents behaved different than my parents, right? And sooner or later we have to realize that we don't have to become our model of the world. And just because we had an experience where, let's say, we had a parent that blew up when they got upset, doesn't mean that I have to behave that way. Quite frankly, right? So we have to, this goes back to what I said earlier, accepting responsibilities for how we think and behave. And I think every relationship, communication's good, authentic communication's good, but then what expectations are we putting on our spouse? And is that expectation reasonable or not? If our spouse is behaving in a way that's causing it's impacting the rest of the family or the environment, then that needs to be addressed. It just is what it is. Someone's blowing steam and they're going off, and then it's the way they're using inappropriate language around the kids. I mean, I can go up and down the list of things. Those to me, I'm like, hey, we gotta have boundaries around that. It's not okay. It's okay to be upset, but it's not okay to be screaming. What's the point of screaming? It's okay to be angry. Owning the emotions fine, but how we behave with one another is different, right? And the fact of the matter is, if the recipe to really building a chasm in the relationship is I just start looking at all the things that Jolie does that drives me crazy.
And this is not the time to do that. I just coming in on the tail end of this, but like everything's going to drive you crazy. Like this is a whole new cadence. Like I think you have to have a little bit of leniency.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. So tolerance, really, really good point, worth writing down. Tolerance is even more important now than ever. We need to create a higher level of tolerance for one another. Because if we don't, what good is that going to do? It's a cycle in your mind. You got to ask yourself, if someone's rubbing you the wrong way, then have a conversation. And that really is a question you ask yourself is like, what needs to happen for me not to be triggered by them? What needs to happen? What are my rules? Not like you have a rule, but like think about your internal process rules. What's your subconscious mind's rules around how you're going to show up around that? And then also, what are you going to do to cultivate? It's a friend of ours word to use a lot. Cultivate the relationship, because it needs to be nurtured, and right now it's difficult for people to nurture that relationship, right? So I think that the last thing we'll talk about is like, well, what would you say about, okay, like, oh, let's go to the 100 Club and have a date night and get a babysitter. Well, that can't happen, right? Like the things that you might do to go out, that shit just got shut down.
Right.
So what would you recommend in regards to what things can I do to turn you on? Just tell everybody out there. All right, go ahead. You go.
Stop loading the dishwasher.
Yeah. That's just like out of the dishwasher. It's not
tolerance, people. Tolerance. No, I mean, I think that this whole thing, going back to the tolerance point, and I'm going to circumvent that question because I don't even know like what you're leading.
Well, I'm trying to say like there's got to be a romantic element of what needs to happen to
romance. It has to have to be intimacy, like having some one-on-one time.
Well, I'll call it romance. You call it intimacy.
Whatever you want to call it. That you need to, that you're not interrupted by 1 or 2 or 7 kids, depending on your situation, or in-laws who might be living there. I think it's really important, just like as in any time, let alone a time of crisis, that you find time to connect on whatever it is. Have a glass of wine or a cup of coffee. Take half an hour if you can. Yeah. I don't know what your days are like, but like even at the end of the day, we might just be hanging out, having a glass of wine and watching something funny or a travel show or whatever. But I mean, it may not seem really sexy or exciting, but it's just like the 2 of us together with like nothing else.
Right.
You know?
So nurturing that time together, being present in that time together, and how you do that, being kind to one another, acknowledging what you see and what you appreciate about one another would be another key tenet. And then also, I think this would be a great time, if you haven't read it already, read the 5 love languages by Chapman, Gary Chapman. Yeah.
Not Tracy Chapman.
Yeah, I said that one time in the video.
I know, I was there.
Yeah, you were there.
One of the things that popped up just a moment ago for me was a thing that I can't remember. It's probably well published, but it was in college. Somebody said, is this going to bother you in 5 minutes, in 5 hours, 5 days, 5 months, or 5 years? And I think that kind of goes back into, maybe I'm on this tolerance thing because I'm looking around and like there are things that still need to be put away from the grocery store, but I can't because the pantry is a train wreck, and like there's this, but like, is it going to bother me in 5 months time? Probably not, unless it's not done in 5 months time, right?
Yeah.
So just pick your battles. Like there's going to be shit that makes you crazy right now. If you let it, there's going to be stuff that makes you crazy. So I mean,
is good.
And know that, I mean, this is like, I'm just thinking from a parent's perspective with kids at school, like this, we're not in this homeschooling situation. I read a thing that said it was called crisis schooling, right? So it's like, we're trying our best to do our jobs and then trying our best to help make sure that kids are being educated and well cared for. And then we can't forget what they're going through too. So I think you don't know necessarily what your partner or your family members are going through, because this is all new for everybody. Mm-hmm. And so their behavior, maybe they're not ordinarily acting like an mm-hmm. asshole, but suddenly they are, because they're trying to process all mm-hmm. this stuff that's coming at them, and how kids are grieving because their whole world was turned upside down and they're not used to the new rhythm and the new schedule, and maybe your partner's not. And so I think just circling back to just having patience and tolerance and compassion for everybody under your roof, and then those around you too.
Yeah. So anything else you want to add before I turn the recording off?
I can't think of anything.
Okay, so we're going to turn the recording off, and then